Hi everybody, welcome back. It's Tamitou here. So today we're building again in Little Havana, and this is actually going to be the last Little Havana speed build. So I've finished a lot of the other lots off camera, and I will be doing one final tour and walkthrough in a separate video. But for now, this is our last actual speed build. So I decided to do a 60s inspired apartment just because I realized I hadn't actually done any of the furnishing in a very specifically 60s style. And yeah, I mean, that was pretty much the time or the decade that a lot of the trade with Havana stopped. So a lot of the furniture and cars and things like that, the last time they would have gotten new ones would have been the 60s. So I thought, why not do a whole apartment that's almost like stuck in the 60s decade? Now, if you've seen my last video or last two videos of the 1970s lake house that I furnished in two parts, then you might realize that a lot of this sort of design is very similar, and that's obviously because you know, a lot of furniture will remain from the previous decade. People don't just throw out all of their furniture and get new stuff for a new decade, a new style. So it will be like bits that have filtered through and some older bits that were kept. So the upstairs, for example, is a lot more dated and looks typically more 50s, I think. And it's very pink and frilly and feminine, whereas the downstairs is a bit more cool and it's been updated more recently, and still stuck in that 60s style, of course. It was also a lot of fun to try and fit a lot of the iconic sort of shapes and pieces into such a small area. So for the downstairs, for example, the Space Game bookcase is perfect with the sort of the standing, the legs that it has on it, like the height it has on it, and then the hairpin legs on the side table with the little TV on. And I think the sofa as well and the mid-century chair worked really well. And of course the rug with that really classic styled or 60s, 70s style kind of pattern on it, as well as the wallpaper that I've used as well. So I liked kind of trying to fit all of this kind of style into a small space, but still look realistic enough that maybe it's not all brand new. It's been you know, it's been worn, it's been used for years, and this is what it looks like now. So they have to kind of make the best of that. And I also wanted to do a little kitchenette, because obviously there's nowhere else that the kitchen can go, so I kind of wanted to put the kitchenette into the back. And there's still actually quite a lot of space compared to some of the other apartments that I've built on this street. So there's actually a little downstairs bathroom, which normally there's only room for one upstairs, so we've actually got two bathrooms in this build. And the kitchen was a lot of fun as well. I think these kind of builds in this era are easy or fun anyway to experiment with color, because you can put a lot of kind of crazy colors that you normally wouldn't put together maybe, but you know, they work because it really starts to look like the decade that you're going for. So yeah, and I also wanted to put a lot of curtains. I think that's another typical thing in 60s and 70s style. A lot of curtains, just a lot of everything, a lot of pattern, a lot of color, and a lot of brown as well. But actually I did film this apartment before I even started on the lake house, so I didn't even have that in my head at this point. I think it maybe did give me the push to actually go for it and to just do a whole build where I could really go for it with the more contemporary 70s style. And that build is actually a lot more it's a wealthy property, so you can tell that it's been stylized and designed on purpose, whereas this is more of a realistic you know, collection of a real family's items and furniture. So if you like seeing how I achieve this kind of dated look, retro vintage kind of 60s 70s look, then you should definitely check out my lake house build as well if you haven't already. It's in two parts, and I can link it down below as well so you can find it easier. But this is just probably the most important part of any house or home in the sort of 60s era, because music was such an important part, and at the time where TVs were kind of you know, people had TVs in their home maybe, but not huge ones, and they only sort of switched them on for certain things, so to watch the news or to watch a big event. Music was still the easiest form of entertainment, I suppose. So I guess TVs were still maybe more expensive or for the wealthier families. So I always try to put a kind of a sideboard dedicated to like a record player or a gramophone, which is the closest thing we can get in The Sims, and then some books and some records and that kind of things. That is always an iconic piece I try to put on a sideboard or something. And yeah, we're just sort of filling in the clutter around about as well, just all over the apartment. And those curtains as well just like have a flower power vibe, so I had to add those. The little downstairs bathroom has these very yellow tiles. I love them for this era. And it's actually a bit more dated, a little bit older, I would say, than the 60s. It's more 50s, just because it's very kind of traditional style. It's very different to the kind of more contemporary lines and silhouettes of the 60s furniture, of the shapes. It's more traditional. It's very kind of delicate and feminine, and you'll see that upstairs as well. It's definitely a completely different sort of contrast to the more retro 60s shapes. So you'll see how I've kind of transitioned upstairs into that, but I thought that'd be more realistic because perhaps the bedroom set of furniture wouldn't have been updated, and they've just kind of stuck with the older stuff that they had up there. Also, my go-to kind of clutter items that you can see on this bookshelf now were the kind of things I used all over Little Havana, just because when I looked at real photos of Havana apartments and locals' homes, I saw a lot of those kind of old porcelain kind of figurines, like the duck and the cat and the dog and the car, and I tried to sort of mimic that in The Sims as best I could, just to get that real authentic feel. They're very old-fashioned style things that maybe for us, we probably only know that grandparents have them still, or like great aunts and uncles or something, and they're kind of the kind of things that collect dust on the shelves or in cabinets, but they're the kind of things I saw a lot in the pictures of real Havana places, so I tried to incorporate that as well. Now upstairs, you can already tell, is very pink and very feminine and very floral, and I obviously imagine the walls would have just been left like that for years, and they're kind of a bit all over the place. They're not really matched or anything, and I really wanted the bedroom furniture to be a set, so I know that was typical in past decades to get a set of matching furniture, so the base game, tables, bed and dresser, they all kind of match, and then I put the vanity as well. I thought that was also a very typical thing, and I've also just gone all out pink for this little bathroom as well, so it's very sickly pink. I think even if you like pink, this is a bit too much, like even the toilet's pink. So yeah, it's got that really, really dated vintage feel, and personally I prefer the downstairs, like the more retro 60s. I think it's just a little bit more free and different. Of course, the 60s was the era when, or the decade when, society started having a bit more freedom with the youth especially, and just taking lives into their own hands a little bit more, and sort of breaking free of the social norms, I suppose. So yeah, you can get a real contrast in this one apartment of one decade blending into another, and yeah, I really hope you like it. So I'm just adding a little bit of clutter just to finish off, and now we are headed into the screenshots. Thanks so much for watching, guys. See you soon. Bye.